In this video, we're going to talk about the difference between money and wealth. If you're really interested to know the difference between money and wealth, and if you want to know how to build wealth, make sure you watch this whole video. We seem to be confused these days by the difference between money and wealth, but there's a big difference between the two. I know we use them kind of interchangeably. You don't say, oh, I have a lot of money, I'm very wealthy, being rich, and all that kind of stuff. So all these words, yeah, they're fine when you're used in just a regular conversation. But when we're really looking and thinking in terms of an investor, there is a big difference between money and wealth. And if we're going to look at differentiating between the two, I think it pays to kind of look back in the past and see kind of like even before money even existed, we can see that there was still wealth. There were still people that were wealthy and other people that were not wealthy, even without money. So it is pretty interesting. I think an interesting concept to grasp is that money and wealth, this is why there is a disconnect. Wealth is really the thing that should be your goal, and that is kind of like the underpinning of all investment. So how was wealth defined before the existence of money? And part of it, I think, I don't want to go through the whole history of money in this video, but the idea was really about property. If you owned or controlled land, if you controlled a lot of houses and properties and etc., then you are wealthier than somebody that didn't have that as many. You can also go back to sheep. A sheep herder that has 100 sheep versus another sheep herder that has 1,000. Obviously, one of them is wealthier than the other. And that really comes with the concept of property and kind of ownership of these assets, these properties. The idea here is that you are able to then leverage and use these resources, these sheep, to exchange that for other things that you may want. Right? So this is kind of like the idea here. And this is really where why money was created and how it got started. Because basically you could exchange the sheep physically, and say, oh, I want to buy something for 10 sheep. So let's say Alex wants to get something from Chris. And then Alex says, okay, well, if you give me this thing, then I'm gonna give you 10 sheeps. And then, yeah, you can walk these 10 sheeps, miles and miles, and then, but it's not very practical. So what Alex can do is write a note and say, hey, you know what, I owe Chris 10 sheeps. And then, and that's it. Now, Chris is interested in buying something from Tracy that is they basically agree on a price of 15 sheeps. So Chris could give Tracy the note saying, oh, by the way, Alex owe me 10 sheep, so you can just talk to Alex to get 10 sheep from him. And then I'm going to write you a note saying 5 sheep. And then basically now Tracy owns 2 notes, one for 10 sheep and one for 5 sheep. If Tracy wants to have 10 sheep one day, he can go back to Alex and say, Alex, I need 10 sheep, and then present the note, and then be able to get the 10 physical sheep and then do whatever he wants with those sheep. That whole practicality of having these notes being exchanged, kind of was expanded, obviously, towards gold, towards something that was more physically tangible and not really tied to a physical property. So this is where gold started coming into play as a means of exchange. And this is really our first differentiation here, is that wealth is really about what you control, what you own in terms of assets, in terms of equity. So if you look back at Alex that owns 10 sheep, so he has 100 physical sheep, that's the asset, but he owes 10 sheep to whoever holds that note. So that means that in his equity is really 90 sheep. Even though if you walk the fields, he has 100 sheep, he also owes 10 sheep to whoever holds the note. So the equity is really what wealth is about. It's really about focusing on that and building that equity. The notes, when the gold came about and all of that, these are, well, the gold is a little bit different, but the notes are really a means of exchange. These sheeps or these assets between participants, between people in the markets. But wealthy people would accumulate all kinds of different things, right? So they would accumulate gold, they would accumulate silver, copper, they would accumulate gems, all kinds of different things, and obviously land and all of that. So they wanted to kind of find some common, something that was rare, relatively rare, easy to carry, and all of that. And so they started with gold. Gold was an asset that was pretty universal, and it was universally agreed that this would be the means of exchange. But even gold, after a while, again, I don't want to go through the whole history, even gold after a while, even though it was an asset, it was a little bit hard to carry, so they converted that into a piece of paper that was basically meant to represent gold. And that whole idea of that gold being represented by a piece of paper was carried through, throughout 1973, when Nixon basically abolished the gold standard. So before 1973, like $35 was the equivalent of 1 ounce of gold. So if you had $35 paper dollars, you could go to the bank and say, give me the gold representing that, and they would give you 1 ounce of gold. So that was how it was fixed. After 1973, then this kind of disappeared, this whole concept. The dollar was now a fiat currency, was just a piece of paper that could be printed. My point here is that before 1973, even that piece of paper, that money, that was really representing gold, so it was really almost like an asset, like an equity, and that would be considered wealth. But unfortunately, after 1973, I would not consider the money to be an asset at this point, because it doesn't represent gold anymore. It is really purely a means of exchange. I mean, you can kind of look at it today and say, yes, this is what part of my equity, but up until it gets converted into a real asset, I would argue that the wealth could be really fluctuating. So money is one aspect of it. The stocks as well, they're kind of like more, they're very highly fluctuating, and you have to be very careful when you consider them as part of your wealth. Obviously, it is something that is considered as part of wealth, but it is highly more volatile than some harder assets like real estate and gold and silver and stuff like that. I know it sounds pretty dramatic, but if you look, if you search on Google, for example, and search for the hyperinflation, the German hyperinflation of 1923, search for images, you're going to see very interesting things. There's one lady that's starting the fire with currency, with money, paper money, because it was cheaper to start a fire with paper money than to use that money to buy a log to start the fire. So that was very interesting. Even a log, a piece of wood at the time, was a better equity, was a better asset than currency. You would see children that built blocks, like building blocks, with stacks of money, because it was cheaper than obviously the toy itself. So we're entering, I'm not saying that we're entering a period of inflation right now. I think we're going to see more and more inflation. Right now, a lot of that inflation, a lot of the money has caused inflation in the stock market. Now we're seeing that more in the real estate. And we're going to see that throughout the as it kind of like goes down through all the different people. We're going to see more inflation also on the regular market. So that inflation, I'm not saying that we're going to have hyperinflation like they did in Germany, but that inflation is going to cause that piece of paper to be worth less, have less purchasing power. While the equity, the wealth that you're building, the real hard assets are going to maintain their value over time. So this is something that is really important to point out. So this is why we're seeing a lot of people that are kind of like moving into the real estate right now, that a lot of people that are moving into gold as well, because they are looking for real and hard assets. So I hope you found this video interesting and helpful, and also to help you focus on what wealth is really all about and how to build that wealth and what to focus on. If you like this video, make sure you click the thumbs up. That's really helped the YouTube algorithm to distribute my video to a broader audience. If you like anything that deals with real estate, money, investing, financial freedom, passive income, feel free to watch the other videos on my channel. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and that you click that notification button to make sure that you are notified whenever a new video is posted. Watch all the videos, click the thumbs up, and we'll see you later.